Now let's talk about offline maintenance, and the first thing we need to know is why is offline maintenance even necessary? And it helps to clean up the database and make it more efficient. But before we talk about that, we need to talk about a major architectural change that has happened to Active Directory in Windows Server 2008. And that is that the domain controller role is now a service, just like a print spooler or all the other services out there. And what this means in English is that the service can be stopped without having to shut down the domain controller, because used to do this compaction and defrag on the Active Directory database files, we actually had to shut it down, bring it back up in Directory Services Repair mode, the SRM, and do some stuff. So now all we have to do is stop the service, leave the domain controller running, and run our commands. One little gotcha, watch for this on the exam: the service cannot be stopped unless the domain controller can find another domain controller and communicate with it, because it does not want you to be left without anybody to authenticate users. Offline maintenance can now be scripted, because we can now write a script to stop the service, to do all of our NTDS utility commands, to compact and defrag and so forth, and then we can start the service back, and we can do all that from a script, and that's really cool. Now we're going to be making use of the NTDS util command here, and this is a command prompt, command line type functionality, and you can go out to TechNet, and there's the link to read about NTDS utility. You need to go read about this. You need to play with it. You can get out to a command prompt and type NTDS util space /? and get help. Show you that later. That's what we're going to do to compact and defrag the database. Now, let's do a little bit of Database 101 class here. Active Directory is, after all, when it's all said and done, a database. In a database, anytime we add new records to it, the file gets larger. And anytime we delete records, guess what? The file does not get smaller. What's logic got to do with it? When we delete the records, it takes the data out, but it leaves the space in there. All of the online database services that can happen to Active Directory will rearrange the data. They'll put it in order so it's easier for the database services to find things, but it does not take out that empty space. So we need something to really clean this database up. So to recover it, we need to take the database offline, and the database needs to be compacted, which means take all that empty space out of there and defragment it. Okay? Let's put everything back in order so that this thing is contiguous and there's no space in there, and it will run a lot faster and more efficiently, obviously. What we're really doing here is we are really rebuilding the database. And you're going to see in part 2 of this video, we're actually going to go through these commands. We're going to compact and defrag the database, but we do this by rebuilding it into a new location and copying it back where it was. And I'll give you step by step coming up in part 2 of offline maintenance.